We have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
The traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion. Over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Flag could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
TWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over. Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another live edition of Anomaly-NOW, straight out of Austin, Texas. I'm Smiles Lewis, and this is my co-host.
Hey, Mark Jackson. Good evening, everybody. Hi, Miles.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
Hey, good, man. Thanks.
It has, I got to acknowledge it has been one hell of a week. We didn't really comment on anything political last week, and I try to keep this official program of the nonprofit Scientific Anomaly Institute 501c3 Anomaly Archives pretty much non-political, except when it comes to freedom of information, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all things good and American. And civil liberties and access to information, as a good librarian should espouse. I am not an actual accredited librarian. I should also mention that. But we, as an official voice of a nonprofit that is interested in the preservation of anomalous material, ranging from all type of strange and mysterious and uncertain phenomena, whether it be parapsychological stuff like psychic remote viewing or other common ESP, electrosensitive? No. Extrasensory perception. And of course, my favorite topic of those subjects, UFOs and cryptozoology, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, wow. Yeah. Just gonna say, each week here in this pandemic reality feels like a year or an eternity. And I know our viewers and listeners out there undoubtedly feel similarly, no matter what side of the spectrum or its many faceted angles you might find yourself inhabiting. So just wanted to acknowledge that and say, I wish everybody safety, serenity, and all the best when it comes to pursuing what life is all about. And sometimes these subjects often feel really outside of the need for normalcy. It can be hard to think about these strange phenomena when there seem to be such more pressing issues. I say all this and I'm having a flashback to right after 9/11 and how I was trying to talk to people about strange phenomena. And it just felt weird. All that said, I'm just glad to be here again and to be safe and with friends and all of our viewers and listeners. So thank you for joining us. As always, we have a ton of great news, links, and information that you can find by linking through our website, AnomalyArchives.org. And we post all the latest anomalous news that we think is fit for print, so to speak, over at our Flipboard page, which you can find the link at the AnomalyArchives.org page. And as always, there are a ton of links. And tonight, I really wanted to, this just came off the wire from today, and I had gotten wind of it yesterday. Actually, I'd gotten wind of it long before this, but back when I was trying to put together the Streamathon in early November, I was reaching out to a lot of different nonprofit UFO and paranormal related archives, including folks associated with the CUFOS, Center for UFO Studies archives. And as those of you who followed the subject for any length of time probably know, they're mostly headquartered up in the northeast of the United States. And CUFOS, the Center for UFO Studies, founded by J. Allen Hynek, is one of those organizations that has kind of seen the rise and fall and the trials and tribulations associated with running an organization focused on UFOs. We've, of course, reported on the past promise and peril of organizations like MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. But I'm happy to say that it appears that there is some significant progress that has been made in the preservation of the legacy of J. Allen Hynek and the archives of the Center for UFO Studies. I just got wind about 4 hours ago from CUFOS researcher, Project 1947 researcher Jan Aldrich, a major scanning project. This is quoting Jan Aldrich. So now we can announce the open secret. The CUFOS case files have moved to New Mexico. New scanners have been purchased and a machine which can digitize microfilm is now available. Digitizing audiovisual material has and can be done. Additionally, all government microfilm and DVDs belonging to Project 1947 have also been transferred to New Mexico. All audiovisual material in Project 1947 possession have also been transferred. The beginning of Project 1947 case files and newspaper clippings have started on the way to New Mexico. Until we are all vaccinated, we will continue to scan materials at our residences. We expect work scanning the remaining CUFOS files in New Mexico to commence about May. We are accepting material, yada, yada. And they give a mailing address and for Project 1947, which is Jan and Jan's long-running project. We'll post the links to this and all the other things that we'll be talking about in the show notes for tonight's show soon. But there's also I didn't get to see it yet, but yesterday there was a live broadcast of Martin Willis's UFO podcast, and he had on guests Dr. Mark Rodeghier of CUFOS and David Marler. David Marler, the Triangle UFO guy in New Mexico. Anybody who knows about UFO archives knows that David Marler has one of the most amazing, beautiful, decked out UFO archive research spaces in his home. And I highly, highly recommend folks check that out. I haven't watched it yet. It looks like something like this. Yes. Thank you, Victor, for loading up that. But yeah, not to promote other podcasts over ours, but yes, Martin Willis has got a long-running UFO podcast that's fantastic, highly recommended, great interviews, great guests, and they broke the story about this amazing partnership, I guess, between when they say New Mexico, I believe they're saying it's been sent to David Marler. Of course, they could be possibly saying that it's going to the Roswell, New Mexico UFO museum, but I think not. I think the fact that the Martin Willis had Rodeghier of CUFOS and David Marler, who has this wonderful archive, on the show, that's got to be what the announcement is. Like I said, I haven't watched it yet, so much going on. It is so hard to keep up. Something else, I'm not going to necessarily go down the list that I sent to co-host Mark and our new volunteer helper on Anomaly-NOW, Victor Criterion. Thank you, Victor.
Hey, Victor.
You, Mark, you sent me a link to the actual research paper posted online, this utokyo.ac.jp article, Magnets Dim Natural Glow of Human Cells May Shed Light on How Animals Migrate. This is a subject area I've been fascinated by for a long time. And is it extrasensory? What does that even mean?
Well, it actually links very nicely to another story that we have up. I think it was in the order of maybe 3 or 4 stories down. And they're talking about the same phenomena by which birds use electromagnetic fields to migrate. So here we have, it seems like 2 study groups that have undergone an experiment, and they both extrapolated backwards as to explain their field of study. So without getting into the gory details of the experiment, let's get back to the mechanism, which is important. They think they figured out how. And the interesting answer to this is, ding, 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 it's a quantum phenomena that actually has to do with something called rogue pairs of electrons. So in animals, we have something, including humans, which is what the study you're referring to. We have something called, I think they're called cryptochromes. Okay, and cryptochromes are kind of proteins. They're not really sure what they do, but there's plenty of them. And basically what happens is we have kind of a rogue electron that's spinning around a lot of molecules or atoms in the body. However, when these cryptochromes come in contact with electromagnetic field, they undergo what they think is a quantum coupling, which is what we know from Einstein's sort of explanation of spooky action at a distance. So here we have the entanglement of two particles. In this case, they're calling them electrons. But after the entanglement is made, whether that's at a maturity stage within both the human or the bird, or the amount of times they're exposed to that electromagnetic field, it seems this quantum coupling or this pairing of these rogue electrons to this electromagnetic field stays with the biological organism for life, believe it or not. So once again, the big mysteries of how's quantum physics is coming in with these very fairly succinct, albeit experimentally difficult to prove. However, they think this is a potential pathway as to how this is achieved both by humans and birds and turtles and fish and lots of other biologies on the planet. Now, of course, we know less about our ability than we knew about the birds because we overcomplicate our biological system. So the team that was studying the human phenomena kind of threw their hands up, and then the team that was using the same pathways for the explanation for the birds were like, we finally figured it out. So that's kind of in a nutshell the way that the quantum spin phenomena and electron pairing is now filling that particular gap. Rather interesting. So, I encourage everybody to go and get into the gory details. We can get into 15 minutes of it. But I think that the important takeaway here is there's a quantum phenomena. And we know that. We know that electromagnetic fields and other type of electromagnetic phenomena do operate at the quantum level. So here it's expressing itself almost mechanically within the brains of organisms. So very, very great stories and very interesting.
Yeah. So, you sent me the link to the actual the actual science paper research. And I had just before you sent that seen this sciencealert.com article that's attempting to, like you did, encapsulate this. Birds have a mysterious quantum sense. For the first time, scientists saw it in action. And of course, this is something that's fascinated me and scientists and Forteans for a long time. This ability, this uncanny ability. I mean, you hear about, cats and dogs finding their way home after having been moved cross country and somehow going across state lines, multiple states to find their way home. How in the heck could that possibly happen unless they have some kind of tuned into, and what else are we as humans going to think that could be, but geomagnetics, north, south, that seems like, unless they're reading the stars, and there's plenty of speculation that maybe birds somehow read the stars, and I wouldn't put it past them. But in this sciencealert.com article, now for the first time ever, scientists from the University of Tokyo have directly observed a key reaction hypothesized to be behind birds and many other creatures' talents for sensing the direction of the planet's poles. Importantly, this is evidence of quantum physics directly affecting a biochemical reaction in a cell, something we've long hypothesized but haven't seen in action before. Yeah, so this is really exciting to me. It does. Like, is this extrasensory? Well, it's a seventh. It's a sixth sense, a seventh sense. It's a potential. This, and actually, I went with my misstatement about ESP as electrosensitive. There too, is that another sense that some people might actually have, and could it not, maybe, like I think originally with the birds that they were hypothesizing like little bits of metal in the cells or in the cell structure or muscle that somehow is being affected enough by the tidal forces, the magnetic fields, that's how somehow they're able to sense and navigate.
No. In fact, with the human study, what they found is when they flooded these protochromes or cryptochromes with a type of blue wavelength, the orientation of the human's head, either towards or away from the light source, caused the field to either diminish or to grow. So we're not talking about physical metals. We're talking about orientations of fields and the excitation of these electron pairs, which is just even more fascinating that it doesn't have like this nuts and bolts. We love saying that, the nuts and bolts explanation to it. So both articles have actually ended with the scientists positing that, wow, if, these quantum pairs or these spin pairs that are created, what other electromagnetic fields in the body are governed, or what other faculties or what other survival techniques that animals might have, or maybe intuition, things all the way down the line to remote viewing, for example. We're just nowing to get biological feedback of quantum effects. We're getting confirmation of theorized quantum effects, but now we're actually being able to measure them and quantify them. So, man, are we just we are on the cusp of some great new science. It's exciting, and hopefully everybody is responsible with it and does the right thing.
Yeah, right, and let's turn it into a death ray. Of course, come on. Or again, a battlefield weapon to make everybody start, all right, make that approaching army all turn left.
Yeah, that's right.
Some say that already exists. Meanwhile, this Harvard.edu article, Science and Technology section, the Mesoamerican attraction to magnetism, studies suggest they both understood the phenomenon and had uses for it. This, again, fascinating areas of research led by Assistant Professor of Earth and Planetary Sciences, Roger Fu. A team of researchers have shown that artisans carved the figures, these big heads, so that the magnetic areas fell at the navel or right temple, suggesting not only that Mesoamerican people were familiar with the concept of magnetism, but also that they had some way of detecting the magnetized spots. Well, I think they would see you discover magnetism by seeing something get sucked up against metal up against another metal. The study is described as in an April 12th paper published in the Journal of Archaeological Science. Quote, "Our direct observation is that there are magnetic anomalies consistent on certain features of these sculptures," Fu said. And the question we asked is whether this is consistent with random chance, or does it require some knowledge or some awareness of where those anomalies are? Again, this just gets into the idea that, ancient civilizations probably had technologies and knowledge of things that we wouldn't necessarily have expected, but thankfully we're rediscovering what they knew. So there's more about this over at it's actually news.harvard.edu, because it's in their Gazette, the Harvard Gazette section. More great stuff that has to do with creatures on this planet, us humans included, and our ability to discern magnetism, electromagnetics, etc.
What is it? Does anybody really know? The answer is no. Actually, we have very, very little understanding of what magnetism is to this day. It's one of the great mysteries, believe it or not. You can hold it in your hand. You can do silly experiments and sculptures with it, but when you really drill down into the field science or science of fields, we have barely even begun to scratch the surface.
And I know I people like me in the field of anomalistics and Fortean and paranormal phenomena and UFO studies and parapsychology, we throw around words like electromagnetic field and EMF and try to use it to verify to how do I say to legitimize our research. And, so much of it is still so little understood. And even what is understood is often misunderstood by the layperson like myself. I've certainly gotten into arguments with people who know more about electromagnetics than I do, who cringe at some of the way I use them. But and the use of the word quantum is one of those things too. It's become so ubiquitous in New Age and paranormal talk that it almost is meaningless, and yet real science is being done in these fields that seems to validate so much of the paranormal scene. But let's see what else we got. I did want to pay our respects to this journalist and researcher Angelia Joyner, who passed away. For those who don't recognize her name, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the way she liked her name to be pronounced. It's spelled Angelia. I always heard it that way, but she was the local hometown Stephenville journalist who helped bring the Stephenville Lights, Texas UFO flap that occurred, about 12 years ago. I'm trying to remember if it was 2008. But it was
2006.
Was it 2006?
Yeah, I'm not positive, but yeah, somewhere in there. You're right. You're right in that range there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So, a good over a decade ago that she was forced into the ufological community. If memory serves, she was more of a hometown journalist reporting on the kinds of things that you do in a small Texas town. And the UFO flap that erupted there, and which eventually encompassed through radar data the idea that whatever this main flap or main sighting reports that triggered the whole flap had been moving towards Bush's Ranch there in it's not Stephenville, but I'm blanking on the name of it. But Robert Powell was one of those who, on behalf of MUFON and other organizations, was right there on the scene, investigating and collecting all the reports. And there were hundreds of former Austin MUFON section director and former Anomaly Archives board member Mike DeGroff was also there taking reports, and he said it was pandemonium. And I think that was the general description, but there were just literally everybody in the town was coming out of the woodwork to finally voice their stories, their sightings that didn't necessarily have to do with the very one that sparked this flap, this series of sightings that were in a small time period, but this wider sense that there had been a long history of UFO sightings amongst the townspeople there. And, of course, there's plenty of skeptics that say those were just, copycat reports or whatever, and people, making stuff up and just wanting to be a part of that. But she really did a good job of reporting on that. And as I say, became a part of the UFO community at large. And it's sad that she is gone now. And it's even sadder. She and her husband both succumbed to COVID. And he passed, I believe, before she did. And that's got to be terrible way to go, lying there knowing that your loved one has just passed as well. But Godspeed, and she will be remembered. And I hope, and maybe we can reach out, that we can make sure that her legacy is secure by making sure that her archives are preserved. So
Miles, correct me if I'm wrong really early on in this, but this Stevensville case, this is the case where the rancher saw the triangular craft in mid-daylight just a few hundred feet above his tree line as he was checking on his cattle, correct?
I am not sure. That sounds like what I remember. Though honestly, I guess I remember that there were some daytime sightings and some nighttime sightings, and so I'm not sure which one that sparked the wave was the one you're thinking of. But yeah, it had that quality of being like one of these unequivocal, like, oh my God, like it was so close you can't doubt that what they were perceiving was what they're describing. And yes, with military aircraft seen chasing them with afterburners on and that sort of thing. And there's actually been a pretty good investigation of that case that was published by MUFON. As I said, Robert Powell did the radar report. In fact, he did a presentation for the Anomaly Archives, and half of his presentation that you can see on this YouTube channel features his brief synopsis of that case.
Well, to her credit, too, if it's the same case, and I'm 99% sure that's the case, you can go back and find online her reporting on the incidents, and you can see her at work. And she was taking a lot of personal risk, and she ended up getting pushed out of her position at that particular network based on her coverage, et cetera. And there were a lot of niceties that went along with that. But truly, someone that was willing to stick up for what she believed to be the truth, and put it out there and put it on the line. And, hopefully the rest of us have that same sort of conviction when we come across some of this stuff, because the government did get involved. They pushed a number of people out. They silenced people. They certainly did the spin job on her. So kudos to her loved ones, et cetera. Just thank you and remember her. Thanks.
Yeah. So, one of the links that we'll be posting is to her official obituary. I need to need to reach out to Lauren Coleman, who does so many really phenomenal phenomenal and appropriate obituaries for people in the paranormal field. But I know he's busy because they've got a big virtual event coming up at the ICM International Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, Maine, which actually we've got a link to that event in the Flipboard as well. So it's researchers like these who I hope their collections are preserved in archives like the Anomaly Archives, or like David Marler's archive, which is backed up for when David Marler in New Mexico is either unable to or passes away. His collection is destined for the University of New Mexico, or these other archives around the world. These are good places to make sure that such materials are preserved for future generations and to preserve the legacy of such pioneering researchers. And that's the thing that tickled me about her was, again, this person who had maybe a passing interest or had maybe seen shows or read stuff about this, but wasn't her passion. She was a journalist, and this caught her attention, and she followed where it led. So. We've got some other links over at the Flipboard, but I did also want to comment. I know I alluded to this, but the big shift at To the Stars Academy. It's Lou Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, and I forget the guy's first name, but his last name's Justice. They all three, they're breaking up the band, as I joked. They are leaving for other realms. Not sure where they're going to end up, but it'll be interesting to watch. As anybody who's heard me talk in the last 3 years about the DeLong enabled TTSA project, I applaud them and think they've got some great ideas and ideals behind them. But I have my and it's not just me being butthurt over a big well-funded organization. It's that I think it's not as easy maybe as they thought it was going to be, but they have certainly changed the landscape, and I think for the better. We'll see, but it's been an amazing ride, and I'm interested to see what's around the next bend on this roller coaster when it comes to these fellows and disclosure. Meanwhile, speaking of disclosure, I guess we can end the show with another archive that I want to commend, John Greenewald's The Black Vault.
Yes.
John, I remember when John Greenewald Jr. was he was like me, a young fellow on the UFO scene, and he started hardcore from the beginning with the Freedom of Information Act requests to the government, trying to document the voluminous files held by the government to see if he could maybe facilitate disclosure. Before that was the catchphrase to describe the movement, to make the government tell us the truth. But John Greenwald Jr. has continued on his quest to not just get these things for himself and lock them away in his own file cabinet, but to put them to make them available on his website for free for folks to go and look. And while he has not been without his share of controversy, it was only just a few years ago when he put online all of the Project Blue Book files, and he got a lot of press about it, but then he had to take them all down because it turned out, if I'm remembering correctly, and if I'm misremembering, I apologize, but it turned out he had scraped them from another online service that had them that was a pay service. So, but the fact is that he has submitted thousands, around I think 10,000 FOIA requests to the government about a wide variety of subjects. That's not 10,000 for just UFO reports. That's for all the kinds of things that he has on his website, including things on MK Ultra and other subjects. So he is not exclusively focused on UFOs, but that really is where he made his name in the UFO field, and he has continued to do a great job. And we'll have links to these articles about. Oh, actually, I didn't send this to y'all. Sorry, guys. But there's several articles in the Flipboard that link to mainstream articles talking about, hey, the CIA has released its vault, its black vault of UFO files for free ahead of schedule. I'm not really sure what the heck schedule they're referring to in these news reports, but they specifically cite John Greenwald having obtained these, and now, again, not to be nitpicky, but it appears that he basically got the CD from them with these thousands of files and has made them publicly available. So he's doing the work that needs to be done, and I commend and applaud him for that. And I also need to splash some water on my face. Want to draw attention to this interview, which I am almost finished with, his interview of Luis Elizondo. You can go to the Black Vault, John Greenwald's YouTube channel, and he's recently interviewed Lou Elizondo. I haven't gotten to any part where they talk about the breaking up the band of the TSA that I was joking about, but it's great because I know that there was some seeming enmity between the two of them, or that was really other people saying, "Why are you criticizing Lou? Stop hurting Lou," because John was asking questions, and
he didn't ask hard enough questions, Miles. Nowhere near hard enough questions.
Well, what I mean is leading up to this interview, he had tried to get an interview with Lou, not really been rebuffed. He never got a response, and he was saying publicly. He was reporting publicly what government officials, the contradictory responses that he was getting from the government as far as, was Lou the head of the project or not? And he was reporting that they were saying he wasn't, at least at one point. And so again, the TTSA lovers were like, "Oh, you're criticizing him and you're questioning the narrative." And it's like, well, that's what journalists are supposed to do. That's what reporters and chroniclers of history are supposed to do. So anyway, it was good. I thought it was good that they at least made up, even though they had never actually had any altercation. But yeah, he probably doesn't ask all the hard questions because.
Well, they spent, I know it was only part one, but they spend a lot of time with niceties between each other, because I think both of them have an end game down the road with each other. Certainly, Elizondo couldn't praise Greenwald's ability to navigate the FOIA, infrastructure and mechanisms to get the results he got. I think, for example, Greenwald himself had said the CIA releases somewhere on the order of 200 pages of a particular incident, where routinely through the FOIA effect, he'll get back over 700 pages that, he has to really pull teeth to get. I liked the first interview. It was very good. They were feeling each other out. Greenwald definitely did start asking him some tougher questions, more about the chronological order of when certain figures stepped into programs, how those programs morphed into other things. There was some nuggets in there. about Bigelow that I thought was interesting, about the changing hands of Skinwalker Ranch, and a couple other things. But hopefully, as they get more comfortable with each other, and if Elizondo's agenda is what he claims it is, because I got to tell you, there was a lot of spin in that interview, and he certainly got his speech and his timelines down by now. But hopefully, if his intentions are true and they get to talk to each other again, you never know what slips out of some of that stuff. So I'm going to watch every single one of them, and hopefully they continue to have them, because it's certainly bringing both sides of the circle together, and I'm not sure we've seen that in some time. So
I too am looking forward to seeing more of that, and in watching that and looking at the Black Vault YouTube channel, I also came across something that I was surprised to see, and just want to give a hat tip to John Greenwald again. He did an interview with his special guest, Jeffrey S. Kaye, Kaye, on the cover-up at Guantanamo, and gets into some very dark and troubling issues that are not new, that are the kind of important humanitarian type reporting that needs to happen, and has been happening for a long time. But most people, for most people, Gitmo has just become a dark joke, even though it is still a horror show. And on that light note, we are just past 7:30 here on this Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. Hey, I just now noticed.
All right. Hey, Miles, before we go, what are you reading right now, man? What's on your desk?
Oh, nothing is on my desk. My phone. I read my phone. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I am still slowly. I am just the slowest reader, plus the way I read. I'm still reading Jacques Vallée's Forbidden Science Volume 4. I've been reading it for over a year, and I'm close to the end. I mean, it's big, but it's also just there. I swear to God, if I take the kind of notes that I like to take with his previous Forbidden Science, it's just page, every other page is just like, oh, I got to look into that. Oh, I got to look into that. And similarly, there's some other great links at the Flipboard that go into other researchers chronicling of Bob Bigelow's. Thank you, Victor. 2021 that go into Bob Bigelow's funding of an interesting thing called the Triad UFO Conference series, and that I vaguely remember from the 1990s. And there's so many other great links there. But what are you reading right now, Mark?
Right now, I'm reading a book on some ancient archaeology. I don't have the title, actually, I remember the name of the title. It's the title of the book is "It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us." Which is I forget the author's name, but really what he's doing is he's talking about the way Western religious dogma infiltrated science. And there's a lot of folks out there, for example, that believe the Nephilim and the giants, the Smithsonian Institute had raided all these North American, South American tombs, took the bones, etc. So he's saying there's some higher, there were more advanced civilizations that were responsible for a lot of the stuff that people today like to speculate could be aliens. And by the phrase "worse, it's us," meaning we then have nefariously, through intent, covered up these previously advanced civilizations that were capable of many, many things that we weren't thinking possible, whether it be early forms of batteries, the Baghdad batteries, even our story tonight about magnetism and understanding the way lightning will magnetize rocks and even derive that force in some instances. So very, very, very interesting book. It's not aliens, worse, it's us.
That's a good title. I like it. Yeah. And of course, that reminds me of the phenomenal talk by Dr. Greg Little during our Streamathon, where he documented so many of the amazing Native American mound culture sites, thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands across the United States. But the fascinating fact of the interesting skeletons that were unearthed within some of these mounds, and some of them appear to be giant. So was it just them, through selection, like, well, let's put our tallest guy's bones into this mound, or were there some that was at the average size? So.
Well, interestingly, Joseph Farrell just came out. I think Catherine Austin Fitz came up with this. They were pulling the State Department's line items for their agenda. And strangely, one of the State Department's to do, for lack of a better term, was to search out the grave of Gilgamesh.
Oh.
If you can believe that, that was literally in the State Department's agenda for this next budgetary round. Well, of course, we all know Gilgamesh as a giant from the Bibles. So here in this sort of Raiders of the Lost Ark way, these documents are emerging from the email dumps where people were actually about to throw. And now, granted, there's a lot of really rich philanthropists out there that want to go see if this stuff's real. I'm not saying that the government thinks there's a secret technology hidden in his tomb or whatnot, but this whole notion of validating the past to validate the future, and then, people being in between there trying to parse out, okay, what are we going to let people know? What are we going to not let people know? Anyway, that was if you just Google it, you can come up with it. State Department, Grave of Gilgamesh. Very interesting read.
Wow. Okay. Great way to end the show. Thank you. Mark and Victor, you stay right there and we can chat afterwards. And thank you all for tuning in to another edition of Anomaly Now, this January 13th, 2021. Happy New Year again. And it's December 44th, 2020. Yes. Okay. All right, y'all. Happy trails, safe travels. We'll see you soon.